I love you, Cleveland, and I love you, Ohio, and a very pleasant welcome to this week's version of Bonus Time with Drennan here on the Big Play Sports Network. Hi, I'm Bruce Drennan along with Ryan Smith, my producer. It's great to have you aboard. Hello, Ryan. How you doing today?
Oh, Bruce, I am doing wonderful. You know, we're getting really close to football. We know training camp has arrived. It is a beautiful time of the year. The weather's still very nice. It's a little cooler as we're heading into that fall season, but it's been a blast.
Big Play talk show host Matt Fontana is going to be joining us in segment number 2 to talk about a potpourri of topics. So we'll get to that in just a little bit. Segment 3, the Ask Bruce segment. And, of course, here to start, I want to talk about the Guardians with the deadline fast approaching and, of course, a victory last night as of this taping here on Wednesday. So, but before I do, I do want to acknowledge that this past Monday I played in the Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame outing at Kirtland Country Club and had a ball. It's always a great event. I want to acknowledge Mike Slow, Steve Click, and Jeff Pulowski, my partners, and we did very well. And great guys, splendid guys. And I asked Jeff right away, Jeff Pulowski, I said, are you related to Al? No relation. He gets asked that all the time. He said Pulowski's a very common Polish last name. So I did want to acknowledge those guys. Also, so many in attendance. Paul Dolan himself was there. Bob DiBiasio, Ken Stefanoff, a former Indians front office exec. Mike Hargrove, Lenny Barker, Ellis Burks was there. Austin Carr, Campy Russell, Chuck Kyle, the former head football coach at St. Ignatius High School. Ted Ginn, coach at Glenville. Just an all-star cast. Pat Tabler was there. Jensen Lewis, John Telich. It was great, and a good time had by all for a very worthwhile cause. All right, before we get to the baseball, a little thing called the Open. I call it the British Open to distinguish it from the U.S. Open. There's 2 Opens, but the British are. Schauffele. How about Schauffele? Second major in his career, both coming in the same year, as he won the PGA, just barely, over DeChambeau, but he held on, and going down the stretch on that extremely difficult back 9 at Royal Troon, he said, I was calm. My caddy was about ready to puke, as he said. But he says, I was calm, and I attribute that to my experience at the PGA. I've been through this now, so I found myself to be very calm. And what an incredible back 9 as he finished 9 under par to edge out Justin Rose and Herschel at 7 under. Lawrence, I thought for a while there, was going to be right in the hunt. He finished at 6 under. Russell Henley had a good tournament. He was 5 under. Shane Lowry, after that tremendous start, and then the blow up, including flipping off the British fans. Oh my, was that controversial? But Lowry finished 4 under par. Has to be incredibly frustrating for him. John Rahm had a good finish to the tournament as he finished under par at 1. Scotty Scheffler, only 1 under. And on the 18th hole of the last round, he didn't even make it to the ladies' tee, or just about to it, with his horrible, horrible drive. Let me make a couple of comments about Scheffler. He's won 2 Masters, including this one this year. But he still has to prove he can win the PGA, the U.S. Open, and the British Open. And, you know, okay, he's winning all these other tournaments and is ranked number 1 in the world. That's fine. But you gauge historically these great golfers by how many majors they wind up winning. And, you know, he's got 2, but they're both Masters, and he's got to find a way to win those others, and he hasn't really been close in the other 3 tournaments this year after winning that Masters earlier this season. Morikawa +2, Spieth +5. Will Spieth ever regain the incredible enthusiasm that everybody had about him when he first broke on the scene and won 3 majors just like that? Dustin Johnson, +6. I would never take just Dustin Johnson in a pool ever. What motivation does he have now that he has all that live money? And he plays like it. He plays like it. Koepka, 8 over. And he can't use his injuries as an excuse this year. And he really wasn't close in any of the majors. Phil Mickelson made the cut and is at 11, finished at 11. Matsuyama, +12. Ricky Fowler, I don't think he'll ever win a major, 13 over. Fleetwood, who's English. I thought he'd have a good British, but no, 9 over, didn't make the cut. DeChambeau, 9 over, didn't make the cut. Victor Hovland, 10 over, didn't make the cut. And Rory McIlroy, the Irishman who grew up on these type courses, 11 over, did not make the cut. And I'm just wondering now if Tiger shouldn't consider hanging it up. I don't know. 14 over, didn't make the cut. We all are cheering for him, but it might be time. You feel sad as you watch him, Ryan. I just don't know if he's well advised to continue to try to compete on in the majors with these incredible talents all over the planet. Maybe it's time to think about the senior tour because he's going to be eligible soon.
Yeah, you know, a guy like Tiger, who is arguably the GOAT in many people's minds, who's been just one of the best athletes of this century that we've ever seen, you know, to see him just struggle this way and people kind of have that notion about him of we want him to hang it up, you know, go out on a high note, as high as you can be at this point, the way he's been playing lately. You know, I'm sure he doesn't want to listen to it. You know, he wants to go out when he wants to go out. I'm sure people telling him to go out just makes him want to stay in even more. But credit to Schauffele now, right? I mean, he becomes a 6th player to win 2 majors in a year. And I think he also becomes a 6th player to win his first 2 majors in 1 year. Yeah. He's been incredible this year. Now it argues, I mean, like you said, Scottie Scheffler seems to have the Masters down, but he can't win any other Open. I mean, right now, is Schauffele considered the greatest golfer in the world right now?
Well, he's got those 2 majors, and I think he's going to, from here on out, because he's in the prime of his career.
Right.
So the next 3-4 years, he's got to be one of the favorites. There's no question. And now he's got 2 under his belt. There's no telling what he's capable of doing because he has won on 2 different type courses. Valhalla played easy for a major, and he finished 21 under, whatever it was. And here, this Royal Troon played extremely difficult, which I was very glad about. It played like a major. And I'm going to talk to Matt Fontana about this in the next segment. I really, you know, the majors should be a lot tougher. These other tournaments they play in where they finish 20, 25 under par, majors are different. And par should be a good score, and it certainly was at Royal Troon. So there's that. All right, let's shift our gear to the Guardians, who have resumed play with a 5-4 victory last night over Detroit after a couple of tough outings. Stephen Kwan, 2 for 3 with a home run, his 10th of the year. Batting average stands at .347. What a ball player. Martinez, RBI double. Jose, 2 for 5, hit his 24th home run in the 5th inning. 82 RBIs on the season. Talk about being an MVP candidate. I think he needs to raise that batting average, though, considerably higher than .274 going up against Judge and Soto. How about this Jhonkensy Noel, 2 for 4 with a double and his 5th home run of the season. Power all of a sudden from the Guardians kids that they have brought up. Smith, Sandlin, Gaddis, Barlow, and Clase combined for 4 2/3 innings of 1 earned run, 2 hits, 5 strikeouts, and Clase records his 30th save of the year. Now, this win snaps a 4-game losing skid, and as a result of this, the Guardians, along with Milwaukee and Philadelphia, are the only teams in the major leagues this year to have to not have a 4-game losing streak. Also, coming into this game, the Guardians had lost 8 of 11 while scoring 2 or fewer runs in 7 of those losses. And 9 of 13 of their last matchups against the AL Central opponents they've lost. The 3 leadoff home runs by Kwan, Noel, and Jose is the first time that Cleveland had 3 consecutive leadoff home runs since September of 1955. Al Smith, Ralph Kiner, and Al Rosen. So the AL Central, still the Guardians in command at 60-40, with tied for the second-best record in all of Major League Baseball. Minnesota and Kansas City are within range. Margin of error, as they say. 5 games.
Yeah, it's tough to complain when you're 5 games ahead leading the AL Central. They were lolling, kind of sleepwalking into that All-Star break. You were hoping they would come out of it a little juiced up. You get the rest. You got the guys that represented you at the All-Star game. You had the AL high of 5 there. But, it was kind of a little bit of the same here as we exited the All-Star break, right? You won the first game against the Padres, but then you got pretty much blown out the last 2. The first game against Detroit, you only put up 1 run. So you had 3 games where you scored 3 runs. That's never going to win you many MLB games. And now you're looking at Quan. It was good to get him back. He's hitting at least yesterday, he had a multi-hit performance. Jose went yard, and you mentioned John Kenzie Noel, who seems to just be the most powerful hitter on the Guardians now. When you would have thought it was Josh Naylor, who's been in an extreme slump. I'm not sure what's going on with him, and that's going to be something they have to figure out because, do you sit the guy? It's tough because he was the lifeblood of your team, and he was a big reason early on in the season that you were able to notch the top record in the AL. But now, it's all fun and good when you're winning games, but now you're entering a very, very, very tough back half of the season. I think it's the 3rd hardest schedule according to the Major League experts. And then you have the trade deadline coming up, and Stephen Vogt, this is a territory he hasn't been there before. It's uncharted water for a rookie manager, so it's going to be crucial to see how he navigates this. But you still got to be optimistic. Like I said, 5 games ahead in the AL Central, not a ton of room to complain.
Yeah, and I do have a little bit of a concern of burning out that bullpen. It's been the best in the major league statistically all season long, but we need innings eaters out of those starters, and that's why I think that the Guardians may be still shopping for another starting arm. Matthew Boyd is close to being inserted into the rotation. It's a no-lose situation with him signing a minor league contract. If he doesn't work out, big deal. But the Guardians, going back to the Indians' days, have been very successful in signing guys like that. So we shall see. But I wouldn't be surprised if they're trying to add an arm. The problem, Ryan, is that everybody wants a starting pitcher.
Yeah, and obviously the big name on the market is going to be Garrett Crochet, as the White Sox are clearly in full sell mode. And, it's nice. You have Tanner Bybee, your ace. You have Gavin Williams, who seems to be coming around a little bit. You have Ben Lively, who's been pitching his butt off.
Been great all year.
Great considering where he came from. He's older in his career. And then you got, like you said, Matthew Boyd coming up. You hope you can get something out of that. There's really no risk with that. But, you still got to go get another arm when you get to these late months and these playoff games, right? Yeah. And I'm not even asking for a Garrett Crochet. I think that's probably a little bit unobtainable. But even a guy like Eric Fetty, a guy like Jack Flaherty, and I know that's an in-division trade, but you got to make something happen here. For the team that you have around you, you got to go get another arm. Because when like I said, when you get to those late months in those playoff series, you got to be able to have multiple guys that you can roll out and get you at least 6 innings. Go Guards. Yes, sir.
When we come back, we will welcome Matt Fontana from the Matt Fontana Show here on the Big Play Sports Network. Now, here is the risk that Browns had to take with. Welcome back. Bonus time with Drennan here on the Big Play Sports Network. Great to have you aboard. Matt Fontana joins us now. Matt Fontana Show here on the Big Play Sports Network. How you doing, partner?
Oh, I'm great, Bruce. How are you? British Open in the books. That was always fun. I know you and I are saying, I want it windy. I want it rainy. I like playing in that in Ohio anyway, so to see it out there, a lot of fun. Football is back. It's always a great time of the year.
Well, as I mentioned in the first segment when we recapped the Open, I actually said the Open.
That's good. That's what they want you to say. They get angry when you call.
Arrogant. There's 2 Opens. One's the U.S. and the other is a British.
But one's the championship golfer of the year, Bruce. Come on now.
On my part. But as I said, I applaud the Royal and Ancient because they set up the golf course, and of course weather helped too. It played like a major.
Yeah.
There weren't a ton of guys like the PGA under par, let alone 20, 19, 18 under par like the PGA at Valhalla. It played like a major. I applaud them at Royal Troon in the Army.
Yeah, it's tough because, I like Shane Lowry, but you see him with a lead, what was it, double bogey, par, bogey. I mean, like, it was a hard golf course for them to play in the rough and the fescue. And then even the shots with the train coming up and then they're hitting it out of bounds, like, it makes you feel like, looks like kind of us out there sometimes, like flirting with out of bounds. So I loved it. I love the setup.
How about Lowry flipping the fans?
Yeah. He was a little angry.
And
on
he
some
was
of
the
stuff.
crowd favorite. Forgot they were all behind him.
Yeah, it's just like, I think when it goes bad, he's like, oh, they moved or they clicked a camera or something like that. Like, you look for those kind of excuses. But yeah, they just had to weather the storm. You had a little parody with like some of the other guys you had never heard of before, but you had some favorites up there. Justin Rose, Andrew Schauffele, obviously. So it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed watching it.
I'm really surprised. You know, if anybody would have had enough because he underachieved and he might have deserved the heckling, was Colin Montgomery years ago. But Lowry was such a crowd favorite. But I really applaud Schauffele. 2 majors in 1 year. His first 2 majors happen to be in the same year. He joins a distinct company of only about 3 or 4 others, including Tiger, that won 2 majors in the same year. And he really, the back nine was so brutally tough. And he conquered it on Sunday.
Yeah, and what do you want? Coming down the stretch, people are on your heels. There's a part of that about Justin Rose where you could feel like the futility of him going, I'm doing everything I can, and this guy's just pulling away from me right now.
Right.
That's what you want to see. So I love it. The fact you can wake up and watch the golf, the fact that it's done by the afternoon with the setup, it was great.
Yeah, it really was. Before I get to the start of the football season, both college and pro, wanted to pick up on some of the things that I was talking about in the first segment, Matt, with the baseball. We haven't heard specific rumors of anything the Guardians might do. Now, we know Matthew Boyd isn't that far away, so that hopefully will pay off. It's a no-lose situation with him anyway. They've done this in the past with Casimir and others, and if they don't work out, so what? You're paying peanuts by Major League standards. But I still think they're going to add an arm. How about you?
Yeah, I want the starter, and I think it's more about as we get closer to the deadline, this next week of finding teams that really are going to wave the white flag. You've heard some teams basically say, like, yeah, we're done. But this next weekend could be really crucial on some of these teams being true sellers. I understand the bullpen arm to shorten the games up and just say our starters will go a couple innings and then playoffs, we're going to go to the bullpen early. I still want a starter. I'd still feel better if you went Bybee, Lively, insert starter in a playoff series. But the problem is everybody wants starting pitching right now.
That great point. I was just going to say, Yankees, Dodgers, everybody
does. Now, the thing is, kind of what I could see happening and maybe what I hope is everybody comes hot out of the gates and they're all firing for Garrett Crochet or maybe even Jack Flaherty, and let them fight amongst one another. Let them get in these bidding wars, and then the Guardians just kind of slide into one, or maybe like, hey, they're over there looking at this guy. Let's go get Eric Fetty while they're all paying attention over there. Now, teams that are selling, they're going to wait till the 23rd hour because they want every single deal that they can get.
Sure.
But the other thing, the Orioles are going to make moves. The Yankees are going to make moves. The Twins are going to make moves. Like, the teams that you're going to have to face and go through are going to make moves. You got to start. Somebody wrote this. It was Jeff Passan that wrote this week, Bruce, where the Guardians need to start acting like a team that's 20 games above 500 because they are.
Yeah.
Get after it. And I know prospects. You've been doing this a lot longer than I have. Everybody gets hung up on prospects, and you don't want to give away the farm and all that. Guardians got a lot. They have a lot of prospects that I think could make some moves. There's scuttlebutt this week about Juan Brito. He's out in right field now. He's been playing right field for Columbus, so they think maybe he could come up now. You found Angel Martinez to be your center fielder and batting second, doing a great job filling that hole right now.
Yes.
You can't keep everybody. Can't put everybody
Noel
in
is showing power.
Right, you're not going anywhere.
I don't necessarily think they're looking for a bat. I really don't. I don't think they want to ruin that chemistry in that clubhouse. Yeah. It's so good. And guys are just because the batting averages in the bottom half of the batting order aren't, glamorous, it doesn't matter. They're picking each other up. It's a different guy every single day or night until this most recent slump, of course.
Yeah.
But I think it's got to be an arm. And it doesn't have to be a front of the rotation guy either.
Sure.
It can be a fourth or fifth type starter, even a sixth. Just a guy that can eat up a few innings to get that game to that pen.
Exactly. And when you have guys that were going short, now you're getting a little more length out of your starters, thankfully. But yeah, you can't tax this bullpen too much. You also are showing more. And granted, they all have tape on Cade Smith. They all have seen Tim Herron at this point. But again, the more you use them, the more that they get shown. And I think you could have Emmanuel Clase pitch every day, and nobody's going to hit him. He's that good.
30 saves now.
You know, but like that's the other thing. You want to try to keep your secrets back a little bit if you can, and you don't want to tax bullpen getting in. You know, we assume McKenzie's going to come back at some point. You assume Logan Allen will come back at some point. Eat some things up.
Williams will find his groove.
I hope so too.
There's another one.
And you'd like to say that you enter the final, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 games of the season, and they don't mean anything. You clinch, and then you can just throw some guys and have your guys throw bullpens on the side to get ready for the playoffs.
Right. All right, so there's that, and that's fast approaching that deadline here at the end of the month of July, and I want to shift attention to the start of the football season. The NFL teams are opening up their camps. Incredibly high expectations for the Browns, as we should have high expectations for them, because as you well know, I have said since the signing of Watson, the clock is ticking. And what I mean by that is we are entering the third year of his 5-year contract. And if we don't make it to the Super Bowl within those 5 years, you've heard me say time and time again, I think that will set that franchise back at least 5 years, maybe more. So it's a critical year, and a critical year for Watson. And before I throw it to you, Matt, I want to say that I'm giving Watson the benefit of the doubt. I think he's a tremendously talented athlete. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that he's going to want to prove to the world that he's worth this unbelievable money that he got guaranteed by the Haslams, which has all the other owners extremely peeved off at them. But he's got to exceed what Flacco accomplished, and that's easier said than done. We're going to talk about the division and the conference.
Yeah. And I think it comes back to the future of the Browns too, right? Like, yes, this year we want to win and you want to get to the playoffs, but now your future with the Amari Cooper deal, they didn't give any extra money to him. The Watson deal, they didn't restructure. The future after this season, things start to open up for the Browns. They get their draft picks back. They'll have some salary cap space. The future is still could be Deshaun Watson's your franchise quarterback, and he's very good, and we're going to ride with him for another 7 years. If you need to get out of it, though, there's those options, too. That's, again, why I think this season is so paramount for Watson to prove he can be the guy. Because if he's not, for the first time since he's gotten here, there's a legit way to move on, right? You were hamstrung by this deal when he got here. You were hamstrung last year. You're hamstrung this year. Next year, not so much. If you really needed to get out, you still have to pay, and you're not getting your picks back, but as far as the pass goes. But now things start to open up about other opportunities. So I think that's even the pressure on Watson, that if he wants to be the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns moving forward, he's got to show it this year.
Yeah, but Matt, you say things open up, and that's a valid point. But if at the end of the 5 years they do not make the Super Bowl, Chubb's going to be gone. Running backs have the least longevity of any position in the NFL. The offensive line, which is very good, is going to be gone. Garrett's going to be old. He's not going to have the jump off the line of scrimmage. The defense, even with Schwartz as the defensive coordinator, who's done an unbelievable job. So, the personnel will totally change over, and you're looking at almost an entirely new roster.
Right, and that's the unfortunate thing. You need to be making hay now while these guys are in their prime and paid up, and you should have at least an AFC championship appearance at this point. You don't. So it's right. That, like you said, the clock is ticking, and it's going to keep ticking not just for Watson, but for the rest of these teams. And, the rest of the players on this team. But also, you're going to have other guys that need deals. Myles Garrett, he's playing on a deal right now for winning Defensive Player of the Year. Like, he's going to need a new one. There's other players on this team, young players, that need contract extensions if you want to keep this core together and moving forward. And, yeah, we know this season will hinge on Watson. It always has. It's going to. It's any team. It's what their quarterback does. And I'm excited that they're back so we can at least start to see a little bit. I'm not going to read too much into training camp throws and 7-on-7, but at least they're out there working on things. And then you just start on the biggest stage you probably could, facing the Dallas Cowboys, Tom Brady in the booth.
The schedule's brutal.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're starting off a Dallas playoff team, Jacksonville playoff team, down the road, Philadelphia a Super Bowl contender. Cincinnati, I consider a playoff team with Burrow back. Baltimore, obviously. L.A. Chargers with him. Then after the bye, you've got Pittsburgh, Denver, Pittsburgh, KC, Cincinnati, Miami, Baltimore. The good news is the division is so balanced that they're going to be knocking each other off. But as I've said before, too, Burrow's back healthy. They drafted to protect him even more. Baltimore's going to be playing with a chip on their shoulder all season long after being humiliated at home by Kansas City. Mm-hmm. And then Pittsburgh's been making the playoffs with no quarterback. Now they got two.
Yeah. And that's the thing. We write off Pittsburgh, and we've been writing them off, and all they keep doing is making the playoffs and making a push. And somebody from this division's not making the playoffs. Like, I guess there's a world it could be, but you doubt very highly. And then you talk about the competitiveness of the South, the East, the West. Like, there are so many stacked AFC teams that any way you slice it up, you're looking at even just that list right there. Two of those teams aren't making the playoffs. Of all the ones that we've mentioned, all the ones we talk about, Rodgers are the Jets, the Dolphins, the Bills, the Texans.
Jets with Rodgers, but Rodgers back with that's a complaint. Miami came into their own last year.
Right.
I mean,
Houston,
let alone KC.
You know, I guess the West is pretty weak just because it is just Kansas City. What you get out of Chargers, we'll see. You don't believe much for the Raiders or the Broncos. Right. So, like, of all of those teams, a few of them are not going to make it, and it's going to probably, like you said, come down to the division on who's able to kind of cannibalize one another. Yeah. The Chiefs should be able to run away with it, right? They have no pressure out there.
I think they'll play through. They're going to go through the motions. They're just going to play well enough to win their division. They've already proven they can win on the road now after last year,
right?
Winning that championship at Baltimore. So I think they'll go through the motions. But it's all coming about now as we are right around the corner from the start of the NFL season, and it's going to be an exciting and intriguing year for everybody here that's a Browns fan. Because, wow, what an important campaign we are about to embark upon. Now, I also want to touch upon college ball with you.
Yeah. Because
now the Rose Bowl, I see, is trying to maintain their independence from the college football playoff. Good luck. You're either part of the big show or not. The merging of all these conferences takes effect this year and the first year of the playoff. I'm really curious about the Big Ten, Oregon traveling to Penn State, et cetera. I mean, I don't have the schedules in front of me, but you get my point. Geographic travel. Washington coming from the Pacific Northwest.
That's a haul to Piscataway, New Jersey, where Rutgers
and playing games in late October or into November, where they could be those Western teams could be playing in snow.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, we did it on our show this week they did a ranking of all the teams in the Big Ten. They did it by quarterback, skill position, O-line, D-line, linebackers, defensive backs, and coaches. Bruce, it's head and shoulders Ohio State, Oregon. That's it. Now, Penn State was very clearly three. James Franklin, Drew Aller, the quarterback. They've got some other positions. But basically everything balanced between Ohio State and Oregon, where Dylan Gabriel from the Oregon, number one quarterback. Then they went Drew Aller. Then they went Will Howard from Ohio State. But Ohio State, their running back, solid, receivers, best. They have the best defensive backfield in football. And they gave the nod to Ryan Day over Dan Lanning as the best coach in the Big Ten, which I think is a little bit of a shot at the Oregon Ducks and that. But it's interesting to see that, you know, with even a lot of these other schools that are moving, it's that they're bringing them. Like, I remember when the Big Ten, they go, we're getting Nebraska. Everybody goes, okay, great. Oh, hey, we're going to go get Rutgers and Maryland. You're like, okay, at best, they slot in as what, the 7th, 8th best team if they're lucky? No, now you have teams coming in that are going, yeah, we're the best in your conference now, or at very worst, the second best that are joining you now. Texas making the move, right? They instantly step in and they go, yeah, we're going to take you on now. Like, bring it on. Like, here we go. It's just that little shift that I think is interesting. They're not just adding, you know, depth at the bottom. They're literally starting at the top, and they're adding teams that should threaten. And how does that look? You know, the Big Ten brings in Oregon, And what if they just decimate everybody in their first year? And they'll go, well, there's still a Big Ten team, and we're happy for the conference.
Yeah,
and I go,
right.
what does that say to everybody else that's been in your conference for
Yeah.
80 years that you just bring somebody in and they just wipe the
and
floor
with Texas
with
and
you?
Oklahoma going to the SEC, that's not going to happen with either one of them down in that conference.
No,
That's
yeah.
not going to happen, that scenario or analogy. You know, there are some people that are saying that if Ohio State loses to Michigan again, that's it for day. I don't necessarily agree with that.
I agree with you.
I don't, because with this new playoff format, let's say they're both undefeated or one team has one loss or they both have one loss, the loser's still going to get in.
Oh, yeah.
And they could win the national championship.
I think-
So how do you lose to Michigan and still win the national championship or even get to the finals and lose? How do you fire that coach?
It drives me up a wall when people put more emphasis on the Michigan game than national championships. And I hate Michigan. You know that. I hate Michigan. I want to win national championships.
Yes.
Now, the ideal thing is doing what? Beating Michigan to go to national championships. And we'll get there, I hope. I would much rather win national championships. The way that it's set up right now, Bruce, I think it's going to be years before we see anything less than 3 teams from the Big Ten and the SEC making it. It's going to be at least half of those spots will be allocated to the SEC and the Big Ten.
Maybe deservingly more than that,
Well,
because it's clearly these two conferences are the power. And especially if we see in the next couple of years Clemson and or Florida State bolting for the SEC.
Right.
Because that'll be the end of the ACC.
Well, and there was rumors, there was a deadline this week. They had to file this week if they wanted to leave after next year, and they didn't. So they're staying in the ACC for now. And they want to push, because eventually we're going to go to 16.
Basketball has something to say about
Right,
that.
and
The
that's the
big
sad
money
thing.
is football, as we all know.
Yeah.
But that's a very prestigious basketball conference.
And that's the sad thing. They don't care about any of the other sports when they do all these things. But now, because we already have 12, they already have 16 that they want to go to the 16-team playoff.
I heard that.
They want to push that the Big Ten and the SEC would get a automatic 3 bids. An automatic 3 bids, if not more. And I kind of see where they're coming from.
I don't
with
disagree
that.
now that
Yeah.
they've done this drastic move of merging all these different conferences.
Yeah.
I disagree. I don't disagree. Now, the other thing, too, with Michigan winning the national championship last year, one good thing about the expansion of these playoffs, and as you know, I'm not a big advocate of it because, as Bill Hancock, who I've interviewed several times throughout all these years, has said our most important goal, he's the head of the playoff, our most important goal is to have the best 2 teams, best 4 teams in the playoffs. Well, that wasn't the case last year. Georgia was definitely one of the top 4 teams in the country. Sorry. I'll argue that to my grave, that Georgia was one of the top 4 teams in the country last year and didn't get in.
Mm-hmm.
So at least this expansion avoids that miss.
Yes, but it also then starts to dilute it because you'll get teams in there that don't deserve to go. And I think the remedy is what you're talking about, Bruce. Make the right call on the 4. If you make the right call on the 4, nobody cares. Now, there are games that go sideways, right? And you're like, well, wait a minute, how did that happen? Washington or anything like that. But they, instead of just addressing, we're going to do the right thing, you get the right 4 in here, they're like, well, we'll just add more. Well, yeah, then eventually you're going to have your Central Floridas come calling and go, oh, well, we're undefeated here. And it's like, you really think you're going to take on Alabama? Like, you're going to dilute it. Now, the thing is, people don't care because it's still a bowl game. It's more football, and that's all people care about. So they don't care if it's a butt whooping.
Are you bothered at the likelihood, it's eventually going to happen, that a 2 or 3 loss team
Yes, right.
could get into the championship and perhaps win it? Because Hancock always used to say we have the most important regular season of any sport. And that was true.
Right.
That is no longer true because of the example I gave earlier with Michigan and Ohio State, both getting, the loser is still going to get in. Are you worried about that?
So the only thing I would say is you would look at the NFL, and there are teams with 2, 3, 4 regular season losses.
That's a different animal,
You know, it
though.
is. But they've set it up that way now. With the expanded playoffs, you're going to have those teams make it, and if they deserve to go win, I guess the other thing is, like, if they want to crown the true national champion, I guess it kind of goes back to Bruce. Does the best team always win the championship? Not necessarily.
Well, yeah, last year we don't know if Michigan could have beaten Georgia. I agree, but it used to be a second game of the season between interconference matchup, a big powerhouses could determine whether a team gets into the playoff or not. That's no longer the case.
Well, and that was the other battle that they were having when it was so limited on the teams. Where if you lost to Alabama in week 2, God, who was that? Was it Texas? Was it somebody?
Texas.
They lost to them in week
Texas
2, and then they come back and they go, well, that was so long ago, or they're a different team now.
Right.
And you're right. So
they spin like political parties.
Exactly right. That was so long ago, and that they're a different team now, and they deserve to make it now. I think their answer just to everything was, well, hey, we're going to make more money, and this makes it easier for us to just get all these teams in there. This is what we're going to do, as opposed to just picking the 4 best. Yeah. If you would have just picked the 4 best, I'm a child of the BCS era. I grew up in the BCS. I loved the BCS. Yeah. It was great. Here's your formula. Did you win this? Did you beat that team? Who did they beat? These are the best teams. Yeah. Go back to that. I'd love that.
I as you know, had Greg Williams on when we did our shows from Firestone at the College Companies Championship for the seniors a couple of weeks ago, which was great, by the way.
Fantastic time.
What a ball we had, and I hope you enjoyed all that programming. And I asked him about the NIL, which really bothers him. And just this past Monday, I was at Kirtland Country Club for the Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame outing, and Chuck Kyle, the storied great retired coach of St. Ignatius High School, was there and was the topic came up, and I was talking to him, and he was extremely emotional about what the NIL, and it's going into high schools now. And there's a big time fear. I mean, Saban said that he used to go into a living room and talk to the family about persuading the family and the youngster to come to Alabama for morals, for values, and for developing into a young man. And he says, now you go in there. He says, this is part of the reason I got out. How much money am I going to get?
Yeah. And these schools, just the race for all their donors and Ohio State, why do they have Will Howard? Why did they get Caleb Downs? Why is Judkins there? Because they spent a lot of money on the NIL side of things. I'm with you. I think it's sad. It's something that, guys are going to start because they have NIL deals, or because they go to this school because everybody gets a car deal or things like that.
There was a guy last year that was on his 4th school, and he wasn't even a senior.
Yeah. Oh, there's some of those guys, DJ Ungalele, all these guys, Cade McNamara. They're in their 6th year.
And if it gets prevalent on the high school level, what are you going to have, a bunch of IMG academies all over the country?
Pretty much, yeah. Kids will be leaving. They'll just go and go transfer to wherever.
How can schools compete with IMG? I played golf on that golf course a couple of years ago, and I viewed that campus. It is It's like a college campus.
Oh yeah.
It's amazing, and it's not just football. They have 3 different football teams.
Yeah.
They recruit from all over the country, and they pay these kids.
Yeah.
But it's tennis, it's golf, it's everything.
Francisco Lindor went to IMG to play baseball. Yeah.
Unbelievable. So it is a fear, but we shall see. We shall see. How good do you think Alabama will be without Saban?
Not the mass exodus. Some of the players that left, and we were talking about Kalen DeBoer, about his insane record as a head coach. He's like 104-12. Now, he was at some really small NIA school, but was really good in 2 years at Washington State. I think he will eventually get them back to prevalent, but it's going to take a year. It's going to take him getting some recruiting guys in there, just because they had so many players that left. So I would expect them to actually make the playoff this year, but I don't know if they'll actually be talking about semifinals or even get into the national championship.
Check out Matt Fontana every day here on the Big Play Sports Network. Matt, as always, my friend, good stuff.
Appreciate you.
Work on keeping that ball in the fairway, because this guy can hit it 300 yards. There's no question about it.
Had a couple.
It doesn't do you any good if you're not in the short stuff.
You know my game. It's that left to right that I get on it a little bit. I changed my footwork just a little bit, but
I'm left to right.
Yeah, but you play that. You play that. So Bruce knows his shot, Ryan. It's just every shot is the same, so he can aim that way. And he kicked all of our butts when we played out there at Firestone. But I'm working on it. We'll get after it a little bit.
Love you, Matt Fontana. Glad to have you on the show, Matt, as always. When we come back, it's time for the Ask Bruce segment here on Bonus Time with Drennan, Big Play Sports Network. Now, here is the risk that Brown had to take with Back with bonus time with Drennan here on the Big Play Sports Network. Programming reminder, next week we will feature Mark Lawrence, editor, publisher of the Playbook, playbooksports.com, one of the top handicappers in the country. I have featured Mark on my shows, both radio, television, now here at the Big Play Sports Network for years. He's second to none as far as his knowledge on college and pro football, and we use and abuse him here, and we will start next week. So we're going to feature Mark to preview. He's got his publication out. We'll tell you all about that, and we're going to preview both the college and the pro football season, both upcoming very, very shortly. This is indeed the Ask Bruce segment, so fire away, Ryan.
Alrighty. Hey, Bruce, if the Guardians are able to make an acquisition for a starting pitcher along with getting Matthew Boyd on the active roster, how safe is Cookie Carrasco's spot, and could you see him, is there room for him in the bullpen potentially?
Well, I do believe playoff time he could be of value working an inning or two, if nothing else. I really do believe that with Cookie. He knows how to pitch. He's a veteran. He's been there, done that before, so I don't necessarily think that they would cut ties with him. He's kind of a leader. Now that Bieber's gone, it's too bad. And of course, his best stuff, his best years are long gone. We all know that. But that's just a hunch on my part. I think that experience weighs a lot with these young pitchers, and I think they might just not totally cut ties with him. See if they do have use of him to use in a couple of innings come postseason.
Already flip it to football. Hey, Bruce, although Amari Cooper's only been here for 2 full seasons, in your opinion, is Amari Cooper the best Browns wide receiver since '99?
No. I can't do well since '99. Okay, because I was thinking beforehand with the Marty Schottenheimer team, that was Webster Slaughter and Reggie Langhorne, who were quite a combo. Brennan was in that mix, and of course Ozzie was the tight end. It was a great passing team with Bernie Kosar at the helm and Biner and Mack running. I just saw Mack, by the way, too. Kevin and Felix Wright were also at the Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame golf outing that I attended last Monday. No, it's hard to argue that he's the best since the expansion, since the Browns came back as an expansion team. And, I like him very much. I like the spreading the ball around. Njoku's a great receiving tight end. Use and abuse all these guys with Watson and that running threat, if indeed his guys are covered. So I'm anticipating the offense to be pretty lethal, especially if Chubb is healthy and ready to go. The Browns can hurt you and score on you in a lot of different ways.
Already switching to college ball. Hey, Bruce, with all the returning players and transfers, is it championship or bust this year for Ohio State and Ryan Day?
Well, as you heard me talk with Matt in the previous segment, I mean, it's going to be a lot more complicated because of the expansion of the playoffs, and you could have a team with 2 losses all of a sudden pulls off an upset. They get that momentum, and they get on a roll just like we've seen in the NFL, Major League Baseball, not so much in the NBA or the NHL, but certainly that can happen now that we have expanded to these 12 teams. We shall see. On paper, you can make a case Ohio State is the best team in the country. But obviously the SEC is the best conference in the country. So whoever comes out of there, and it may not even be the championship team. I don't even know why they're going to conduct these championships. I mean, what's the point of conducting the championships now, Ryan? With a 12-team expansion, what is the point? If Ohio State wins, and plays Iowa again, I mean, no offense to Kirk Ferentz, who I have a lot of respect for. I mean, what's the point?
I agree. And wouldn't you argue at that point, Bruce, like if you you're 12-0, right? You're Ohio State, like you mentioned, you're going to play Iowa in the Big Ten championship game. What's your point of running your players out there and risk of injury? You're already nabbing the top spot in the playoff. Like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
And what does this do with the other bowl games, too? I mean, we've already seen these kids that know that they're going to get drafted, even if it's in the 6th round. They bow out of these bowl games like crazy. How much interest has been lost in those other bowl games, which used to be pretty attractive? Not anymore.
All right, the last one here. We'll flip to the Olympics, which are coming up. Hey, Bruce, it's arguable that Michael Phelps, Jesse Owens, and Carl Lewis are the best 3 male U.S. Olympians. Are there any other, in your opinion, that belong in the same breath?
I think Cassius Clay, without question, later became Muhammad Ali. I don't think there's any question whatsoever. You're going to talk about some of the basketball players since they allowed the pros to come in. No question about that. Bruce Jenner. Before he went trans. I mean, you know, unbelievable, great athlete. Unbelievable. The swimmers, the track and field stars, boxers. Gosh, was it Sugar Ray Leonard was an Olympic champion too? So, I mean, there's so many. I don't think the volleyballers get the credit that they deserve. We have dominated in volleyball in the Olympics over the years. You know, I'm not talking about rowing or, you know, some of those sports. We don't excel in those sports, but or certainly that synchronized water with the feathers and all that, whatever they call that. But indeed, there's so many. But I don't know. I can't get excited about the Olympics like I have in the past. Ryan, I just can't do it. The opening ceremonies will be Friday, and they're doing something different. They've never done it before. It's always been in a stadium. Now they're going to come down the Seine River, which runs right through the heart of Paris. Open river boats will feature these countries, and they're going to come. There'll be stands on both sides of the banks of the Seine. That'll be kind of cool to see, I think. But I just can't get excited about the Olympics like I have really my entire life.
How do you feel about the athletes selecting LeBron to be the male flag bearer, the first U.S. basketball player to earn that honor?
I can think of a lot of other people I'd rather have carrying the American flag than LeBron James, who thinks he's knowledgeable enough to tell you and me how to think and vote. I'll leave it at that.
You knew I had to throw that out there, Bruce. That'll do it for Ask Bruce.
That's all the time we have for this week's version of Bonus Time with Drennan here on the Big Play Sports Network. I'm Bruce Drennan on behalf of my man. We are indeed, Ryan Smith, going to be back with you next week for Mark Lawrence. Don't forget, Mark Lawrence will join us for the first of many shows we're going to be conducting in college and football season. That's next week here on Bonus Time with Drennan. Ryan, you have a good one. You have a good one. Until then, as always, and most importantly, you remember, I love you, Ohio.